This is like a milestone, landmark, getting Shauna and Jennifer together at Leaders Who Care. And man, we couldn't have a Leaders Who Care without you guys, right? So
That's
welcome.
Right. Thank you.
So best place to start is let's have you introduce yourselves. Don't tell the whole story, just a little bit like where you're from, where you're at now, personal, real intimate personal stuff that you've never shared before type of thing. And then we'll get into the other stuff. So rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Who wants to go first?
Jennifer, you go first.
Oh, that was good.
I always go first. It's always me.
Well, I was about to duke it out with Shauna, but I won't this time, and I'll take her lead. My name is Jennifer, and I can wiggle my ears. If anybody on this podcast wants to try it, it takes a ton of jaw focus and literally wiggling of the ears. I am not here for that purpose, I don't think, but I am a leader who cares very much. And I'm humbled and honored to be in the company of Mark and of Shauna.
That's awesome. So where are you from?
I am originally from Chicago, Illinois, in the United States of America. I live in Wyoming, which is why I have a cow behind me and a sailboat that's not quite in a, I would say oceanscape, but a streamscape.
Very sweet. Well, that's one of the more interesting introductions, ear-shattering introduction that we've ever had. So Shauna, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Shauna Arnott. I am a Canadian. I grew up in the Niagara region of Ontario and not in the States, in Canada. And I currently am homeless because I just moved out of my house. But I do live on Vancouver Island, I'm joking, most of the time, and hopefully to be going between Wyoming and Vancouver Island very soon. And I've been building a company called Haste and Hustle for a few years. I have been connected to Mark and the Fifth Element group for a few years now, and absolutely adore you guys. And I'm definitely a leader who cares as well, and so happy to be here too.
We are happy to have both of you. This is going to be one of the cooler, more interesting, more out there type of interviews, which is.
Well, that's what we provide. Out there entertainment.
We are the champions, right? So before we really hit it, can you each share with us the infamous why and when you thought you discovered your why and basically why you do what you do? So this time we'll start with Shauna.
Sure, I know exactly when. I was in college and I had been basically soaking up all of the TEDx library or TED Talk library at the time. This was when it was fairly new because I'm older than I look. And I absolutely loved the idea of bringing together a deeper understanding, like cross-pollinating information between what I felt were siloed, like academia was siloed, then you had arts and entertainment was siloed and the business world was siloed. And I was like, there's nothing like kind of cross-pollinating, so that I felt like there wasn't a lot of growth between those things. And I wanted to help enable that. And so I came up with this whole desire to build out my own version of TED. I didn't want to replicate it. I wanted to create something a little bit different from a very humanistic sort of way, and to support the conversations, having conversations across industries. And because I truly believe that when we talk to each other and we educate and we learn from each other, that's when we stop bad things from happening and we grow together in a nicer way. And I know I'm being a little bit simplistic there, but that's kind of like the original why, and it's evolved from there a little bit. I've definitely sort of niched down a little, but ultimately I just want to see conversations happening in the world that enable a more positive way of living.
That's awesome. Jennifer, your why?
It's so hard to encapsulate it in just a moment, as Shauna so beautifully did. But with that question, what came to mind in advance of Shauna's answer was at the precipice of being in a public company and determining that it wasn't yet for me. What I mean by that for all the listeners is contributing so much to something, yet only being able to do so much. And when you then decide for yourself, if you believe that what's in your heart and therefore what you action from your head is the best possible outcome, even with all of the potential F-ups, that's the best bet, then why are you staying within a company? And that inevitably becomes all of our true north. And yes, if you are a person listening where you don't want to go on your own, find someone like one of the three of us who's crazy enough to have already gone on their own, because we need people, right? But that for me became the real why. I can't advocate for myself under an umbrella if I'm not willing to hold the umbrella on my own.
No, that's man, I think we'll just encapsulate what you both just said and call it a day. That was great. So tell us then about your journeys. Got Niagara and you got the Bay Area type of deal. How did you guys meet, and what was it that sparked that you would become potentially partners, friends, etc.? So Jennifer?
Mhm.
The day I met Shauna is a day I'll never forget. For better or worse, as all of us know from that thing called COVID-19, right? I think masks were just released from the airplanes as of yesterday, end of day per Florida, US of A. Shauna and I met on that thing called Zoom. We did not even meet in person. We were connected through a mutual acquaintance in a tech summit environment. I was physically in the tech summit with this individual who had coincidentally attended one of Shauna's events for her entrepreneurial community. This individual met me, and apparently, when I did not yet know Shauna, now it seems funny because Mark, you know both of us, there's this person that's just like you. She's just Canadian and redheaded. You guys need to meet. Okay, this sounds pretty cool. And almost, I mean, literally within minutes, and Shauna can keep me accurate, it was instantaneous that this individual put us together. And then before we knew it, we were having weekly Zoom meetings, sometimes Google Meet, because I think it's a bit more efficient for another day. And fast forward, we had our year anniversary, and now we're in a position where it's a little bit more about doing and not just talking. And what I mean by that is not to discourage people from ideating. Ideation is the core of what leads to action. Inevitably, ideas are only ideas, and the people who action are the ones, like all of us, who have failed and then continue to pull up our bootstraps to trudge forward. Fortunately, my business out of Wyoming is an outcome of Shauna's entrepreneurial community. And that, in summary, is the long and short of our 3-second courtship.
Yeah.
I find it interesting. Usually relationships of all kinds, it's because you got the chemistry, you feel it and whatnot. We're actually getting sparks on Zoom now, is what you talked about. Shauna, is that what happened?
Well, I'll tell you something. When I met Jennifer on Zoom that time, I immediately kind of understood why our friend wanted us to connect, because she was immediately like, come stay at my house. Here, let me show you around. And, you know, and we had this wonderful conversation. And I was explaining this to Jennifer one time, how I always look for people who are a little bit, I call them outliers. And I see outliers as people who are doing things differently, attack problems differently, look at the world differently, and don't necessarily fit in, but don't but are working really hard, don't fit in with the norm, but still like manage to like move mountains and do incredible things, and are sometimes even overlooked. And when I was speaking with her, I was like immediately like, Jennifer is an outlier. She's got this incredible energy and deep kindness, and just like an incredible way of seeing the world. And I was like, I don't even understand, but I need to know more. And just the way she like understood problems and all the different things, I was like, okay. So then when we were, then when we kind of had this ongoing meeting set up, I just kind of kept seeing it over and over again. And then just ongoing support. And then when we did meet in person at the Billings, Montana airport, I was like immediately like, yes, we are like sisters. And it's been just awesome that way. It's great when you can reach across a border and meet new people and just find such great connection.
Well, oh, Canada and American border, I didn't realize it was literal, but now I feel like we need to split a flag and then literally split a flag too when you go to Europe.
Yeah,
that was epic. Or maybe do a little spliffy.
Yeah.
But now I just literally envisaged an entire new flag of our family sisterhood with the 5th as the center emblem.
Well, we'll chat about it. Do we have to have a meeting in Billings, Montana to make it happen, or what?
That would be the place to, announce it.
Sounds good.
The launch party.
The launch party. So it's interesting how a lot of us have been impacted by the last couple of years, and how we've learned to actually get in relationship, not physically in person with each other. Whereas before we all thought we were connected on social media and this and that, but never as connected as we forced ourselves to be or developed to be, because we had to be. We were missing the other part of it. So it's fantastic how that happened. So after we met you, both of you on, I met Shauna and then I met Jennifer on Zoom also. And now it's emerged into a lot more. So share with us a little bit, Shauna, maybe you can start. Share with us a little bit about Haste and Hustle, how it evolved, how it's grown, and the impact that you have made and looking to make.
Sure. So Haste and Hustle started in 2016, and I had our first event in 2017. And it started out of that need to create conversation again, and create conversation. At the time, it was to create conversation around the business opportunities in the Niagara region. In my mind, I was like, everyone always flocks to Toronto and thinks it's the greatest place on earth. And the reality is there's so much opportunity down here. I'm actually in Niagara right now. And, proximity to the border and just sort of the workforce and a lot of different things. And I'm like, we really need to shine a light on that and bring a great event to support entrepreneurs, even outside of Niagara, to this country. Because at the time there just wasn't as many events. Like every time you wanted to like learn something or do something, you had to go down to the US to these mega events that were sometimes unaffordable or sometimes just out of reach. And so I was like, let's do something here and keep it affordable and keep it accessible to people and start these conversations. And so I just kind of like birthed it and brought it to Niagara. And we had Gary Vee in the first year and Casey Neistat and Manjeet Minhas and some wonderful speakers. And it was great. And then we ended up doing it again in Toronto the next year, because we did realize that although I tend to be a bit too idealistic, and sometimes you have to temper idealism with the realities of the world. And so we ended up having it in Toronto, we sold it out and it was great. And then we started doing the Haste and Hustle hookups and building out that community. And it was incredibly successful that year. So we were really riding that growth, that time of growth and real value. And I was excited to see that happening. And we then started into our next one. And yeah, so now we're in a position where we've had a couple of years off where, through the pandemic, and it's been redoing the event and postponing it and all that. And so we've moved it to the States just to kind of start to access a bigger market, because what we're realizing is that, you know, we can still support our community in various places, just from in a different way. And so we brought it to the States because we were just having no luck here in Canada because we were too locked down. And so, yeah, we're excited to be having it in Austin with Richard Branson on September 15th, 2022. And yeah, I think it's a little bit of a different setup this year, because again, we've just been working with the realities of the market and with the pandemic. So we have, instead of 3,000 people, we're having 300 people, a different price point, but in a more intimate setting with workshops and sort of deeper conversations. But again, it's sort of like all tying back to my original, why from, a million years ago, where we're bringing together leaders of industry to have these deep conversations. And I'm excited to see what happens at this one.
Well, to your credit, you had to postpone a couple, and Richard Branson obviously really likes what you're doing because he's stuck with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, he does. It could be that. It could just, it could just be the fact that, I mean, we paid a lot of money, and ultimately, we had no choice. Like we literally had no choice but to move it. And so, yes, I like to think that he thinks I'm great, but I don't really know. So let's go with that though.
Well, he could go to a lot of places and get paid also, but he's stuck with Taste and Hustle. So I think that is to the credit of what he thinks the impact this is. Otherwise, he doesn't have to associate.
Yeah, that's true. I do forget about that sometimes.
So go with that, eh?
Let's do it.
So that leads to another great thing that you're doing. It's Rockin' Ranch, which I love the name. And Jennifer, tell us how that started and where you're going with it and why that's exciting too.
Similar to Shauna, the why that I didn't realize you were going to ask, and then I think ties perfectly to the foundation of why Rockin' Ranch. Thank you for giving kudos to the name. Those of us who name things feel quite proud of it. Sometimes it's well received, so appreciate that. I realized in the marketplace that my learning on lean principles, for those of you in the listening group who have done any sort of Six Sigma, any sort of manufacturing across any vertical, you're very familiar with lean principles. And the simple model is, no surprise, be efficient as possible in order to maximize productivity and therefore profit. However, in this world called fashion, we're all wearing clothes today. Most people do every day. $3 trillion industry per annum, highest ever during COVID because of those thumb things on our personal devices, does not actually abide by any sort of lean principle. So I thought in my brain, if I can apply that umbrella of enterprise management that I learned in lean and put it under my own accountability in the fashion world, could I do my part and incubate an idea that I have to actually seismically change, likely for better or worse after all of our lives, but hopefully next generation's life, switch the entire industry. And this model is simple. I am in Wyoming, hence the cow, as we mentioned, and my ear reference at the beginning. Wyoming is a lovely state for many reasons. It is real. I know Canadians are on board with this because Shauna lived close enough to the United States border in Niagara growing up. Number two, we have space, and we have space to grow businesses, to test businesses where people are not on top of each other. No disrespect to a lot of very high capacity environments. We similarly have a lot of tax levies. And if you're in a startup business and you've gone through the research, you'll recognize Wyoming. Delaware gets more street cred, as does Texas, which is where the September 15th event will be with Richard in Austin. But Wyoming is a severely underrated place if you're interested in this type of incubator. And what Rockin' Ranch is doing currently, and we are up and running, excited to state, is we are applying lean principles. We have 3 clusters of sewing machines. We make tops, bottoms, and garments, as well as home goods. It's a fancy way of saying accessories. And we connect it to a laser cutter. So when we say we are, in summary, a cut and sew manufacturer, the cutting is actually not a human. A human monitors the machine. Monitoring that machine means that we are minimizing waste on the fabric. Similarly, on this cluster side, Mark and Jennifer and Shauna could each be assigned to a cluster, and we could make those tops, bottoms, and home goods. Similarly, if we reach capacity, because we're in a cluster, we could each get 3 more Marks and Jennifers and Shaunas. And so in summary, the vision is we take this incubator, it works. Unfortunately, it does. We already have 7 customers. We want everyone who's listening, if you know of a manufacturer in cut and sew, we will go and train you. We do not intend to bring any factory down. We rather want you to see how we can create people for profit. Our sewers deserve wages. They are artists in their own craft. And fortunately, people like us who have crazy ideas can actually action them to make somewhat of a dent in a $3 trillion per annum vertical. In brief.
What's awesome, there's a lot awesome about everything there. What I find most awesome is the history of great enterprise coming out of crises all the time. In this case, a pandemic, and people craving to do something incredible that will make money and make a difference. And it's were you going to say something, Shauna? It looked.
No, I was just gonna say Jennifer Striegel, everybody. But I missed my cue, so never mind.
Well, we got it in there, so I promise not to edit it.
Anyway, carry on, sorry.
No, it's true, because everybody really does want to make a difference, and everybody really does want to be respected and does want to have dignity in their job and and all that. Especially when things like this happen, there's so many points, so many things that have happened in the world that are happening right now that make Haste and Hustle and Rock and Ranch the right timing, the right place, everything. So that's why we're excited about it at Fifth Element, and excited to be part of it. So with that said, one of the things I found, and when we trademark Leaders Who Care, is that on the premise that business can do way better when they do good, and now it's become something that people say, and that some of them even mean it. But it's taken decades for us to get to this point. I've talked to a lot of executives over the years about, why aren't we getting the best talent? Why aren't we getting people? Why are people leaving? Why are people stressed out? And I remember one of my clients, Ryder, big trucking company, now the biggest logistics company. They had a lot of family members working there, and they had kids and this and that. Long story short, after a lot of conversations, they said, well, let's build a daycare center so people will be less stressed. They built a daycare center. The ROI on that daycare center was incredible for what they got with respect to their talent and what consumers thought of them, et cetera. So, we've seen that corporate purpose aligning with social impact is better for business. You've both built relationships in business through the visions that you're sharing. What's your perspective on how Leaders Who Care, like yourselves, can create economic and social impact at the same time? Who's first?
Go ahead, Jennifer, you can start.
I love this. We're so good at the yin and the yang. We're like us, if we could just meld it together. So I'm going to do 2 things. One is what not to doubt. What I mean by that is we just talked very optimistically about the why and the transition. And even in COVID, which was so tough, Shauna and Jennifer were, cheery. It all is hard. Every day is hard. 24 hours of the day is hard. As long as you believe in yourself and what you're doing, you will get up tomorrow, and there will be even just yourself around you. And that, for me, is my dream for enterprise. I will give a very simple example. And if American Express, you're listening, you should absolutely support Leaders Who Care. The former CEO of American Express, during a very famous, awful situation with George Floyd. Whether you were on the fence of the cops or George Floyd's death, it does not matter. I illuminate this story for this reason. That ex-CEO contacted all of his CEO types, whether they were currently CEOs or previous CEOs, And they rallied together and said, let's not talk about George Floyd. Let's not talk about cops. Let's not talk about where we are. Let's talk about how we never have the George Floyd archetype in a situation where the cop archetype is going to feel that he or she needs to be there. There is a 10-year program, Nike, Gap, American Express, all the others, I apologize in advance for not doing you justice, have programs in place, not for us enterprise geeks, not for us intellects, for the people who are the George Floyd and the cop archetypes to have job opportunities. So neither are ever in that situation again. This is what I wholeheartedly believe. If just a bunch of us, the three of us, and let's replicate it every day for 365 days across the globe, I'm 100% that the world will be a better place. And that for me is my dream in life for leaders who care, that people listen today and for future episodes and previous episodes and say, I'm never going to compromise on these things because I believe I'll figure it out. And if I can't, someone else will. That is my hope for leaders who care.
Brilliant. Shauna?
Yeah, how do I follow that up? I was nervous of this when I offered you to go first. I definitely look at someone like Naveen Jain and think about something he said one time when I was in the audience, and he said entrepreneurs, and I think what he really meant was leaders at the time, have the opportunity to change the world. And what he means by that is, you know, you put a leader like him or Elon Musk or whoever it is at the forefront of these companies who are leading, you know, big industry. And if you have someone who cares, who is focused on a mission to improve the world, improve humanity, improve life here on Earth, then you have someone who is single-handedly going to impact anything that sprouts below, right? And so I think that it's really important that we look at that as a very important measure of someone who can truly affect change in the world. And when we're putting leaders in place in companies to really consider their hearts and I know that sounds very woo-woo and very kind of whatever, but I think that we need to always be considering what is their mission? Is their mission just to kind of go to work and make money every day? Well, maybe you're not meant to run a large company or you know, be a leader of a major industry because you're not pushing the envelope forward. And I just think that when we have people who care and take care of those below them and lift them up and, you know, feed that growth, then that's when you have company growth, you have personal growth, and then you have larger industry growth. And ultimately that's, you know, the best way to win when we're all growing together. And so I truly feel that with strong leadership is an essential part of it is someone who cares and has genuine empathy and concern for those below them and for those around them. And honestly, maybe I'm not even saying that right. Doesn't even see people below them, just more around, right? And I think that if we can be qualifying that as a larger value item or a larger value in someone's personality for leadership positions, then companies will do so much better.
I mean, well said. You know, there's two people I think about when you guys talk about that. There's the ex-vice chairman of Royal Bank of Canada is now a senator in Canada, and he would always have his direct reports almost every day go to their direct reports and say, how you doing? But it wouldn't be going to their office and say, hey, how you doing? He asked them to sit down for at least 2 minutes in their office and say, look at them in the eye and say, how you doing? How's it going? And that is the impact of that, believe it or not, as simple as it is, really hits home. Even the slight distinction of standing at the door saying versus sitting down and caring. It's amazing.
It's actually interesting. Sorry to interrupt you. I saw it growing up in my mom. the most. She ran a health records department in a major hospital system in Canada, and she had so much empathy for the people that worked with her, and took time all the time to, sit with them, speak to them. She got to know their family and their friends, and she was invited to all their weddings and all the different things. And when she left, I had so many of her employees reach out to me at mostly at the event that we had for her, but reach out to me and tell me that they were so, that they felt that she truly cared about who they were. And she would rearrange schedules if they had sick kids, or, different things, that she would really spend time to make sure that their working experience managed well with their life. And in that, I also remember that she ran that department with never had a debt, like it was never in deficit ever for the entire 33 years she was there. And they were never fined, which often hospital health records departments in Canada get fined for being late with record filing. And she had very little turnover. And so therefore, I think to myself, she saved that hospital so much money all the time just by being someone who cared. And in that, I think that's just like a sort of a very small example of something that can be true across, any industry. So I share that to bring it home.
No, it really makes a difference. My background, as you guys know, is leadership development and talent, executive search. And it always, when you're fighting for talent, you've got to care. And that's what a lot of leaders have found out. If they don't really care, not pretend care, they're not going to win that war. And there's been, to some degree, and I think you guys would agree, an awakening. This is why the Great Resignation, everything, of what's really important out there. And I think Maya Angelou has a great quote that I use a lot when I'm introducing leaders to other potential leaders that they want to hire and so on. She said, to some degree, most people forget what you've said, most people forget what you've done, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And it's brilliant. And I'm not in their category, but if I would add to that, if you've made them feel good, there's probably a better chance that they'll remember what you said and what you did also.
Yeah, that's a good, I like that addition.
And so the last questions I wanted to ask you is, my grandparents were from Kyiv, actually, Ukraine background, with
Oh, wow.
what's going on right now, and my mom and my aunt and so on. And they would always say in their accent, the most important thing is your health. That's what they would always say, with that even more of an accent. And we talk a lot about well-being. What do you think the responsibility is of leaders like yourselves, running organizations, others that to care about three aspects of well-being for people that work with them and for them: their financial well-being, their physical well-being, and their mental well-being? Jennifer.
Well, first, I'd like to express my complete gratitude that you've been transparent about the Ukraine situation. It's incredibly hard. I think, as most of us know and have been exposed to the rest of the world, this is not the first time. In our world, every single day, there are many countries, women and children and husbands and fathers who experience this every day. And I just think it's incredible to see that people like yourself and us, and hopefully more people, will continue to just speak up and speak out and align together. So taking a moment for the Ukraine situation.
Yeah.
Related to well-being and the three levers, I'm going to start with the financial one because I actually think it drives the other two. For better or worse, we live in an economy where we are required to pay to live, whether we have a trust fund or we get money borrowed or we get something figured out where we don't have to pay for our house, someone paid. And if we can do our part, even on the most incremental level for entry-level people, and I don't mean entry-level as in teenagers, this isn't a demographic situation. I mean in terms of the value equation in an actual economic scale, as long as we recognize what the cost of living is for that individual, and we aggregate that expectation to the time that we expect them to give, I actually believe it's that simple. The problem with the other two parts based on that financial gap is I'm a self-professed workaholic. My return on an investment for anyone is not going to work, but that's my choice. What part should be valued is based on the time I spent versus what I need to do in the other parts, which is the personal and the social wellness. And so to oversimplify, where I also feel that Rock and Ranch can help is by proving the model of Shauna knows the finances, and Mark and Fifth Element, you've been slightly exposed as well. Sewers are not making $1 million a year. They're not looking to drive a Tesla from Elon Musk. They don't want the iPhone 13 Plus. They are not interested in those things. That doesn't mean, however, they shouldn't be able to pay their rent or mortgage. And if we can just offset those things and get back in the balance, the thriving middle class from my lovely country, America, we created this, right? This is why you Canadians are talking to me today, right? So that part in summary, if we can reestablish a financial wellness for all human beings on the planet, I believe the personal and social wellness will literally flow so much that it will be an overwhelming bit of hydration.
Yeah, I agree. Shauna?
That's such a good answer. I look at all three as a little bit differently, but I definitely agree with what you just said. And I think it's just so important in my mind to be cognizant of where people are at and what people are capable of in their state. And I think and to remember that as leaders, as people employing others, as people contributing to those states, financial, mental, and health, we have the responsibility to know about them. And I think if we aren't cognizant that we have an impact on those things, then we lose our ability to be empathetic and to be supportive and to be good leaders. And I also know that even as leaders, we have to consider that for ourselves, because we lose those things too, and they get out of flux. And so it's important for us to be evaluating that for ourselves too, so that we can then actively impact properly the way we want to, right? And so I just think it's important to be very cognizant of the people that you're working with and supporting in all three of those categories, so that you can, and that kind of goes back to getting to know them, understanding who they are and what they're up to, and just remembering that we all work together to create something better. And if we can't be focused on those things, then we're not going to have a great trajectory. That's for sure.
I think you guys know that I make a lot of sports analogies,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
someone shared this with me once and said, never understood when you're in a league and two teams have a trade. And I heard this when I was a kid too. They have a trade, and the media would immediately say, I wonder who won the trade and who lost the trade. But then if you look at it differently, the teams are in a league. And if a team wins a championship every year, but the league sucks, what's the value of the championship? So
Right.
we're effectively, as you guys are saying, all in the same league. And for us to win, and you can be competitive in the same league and want to win the championship, but if you want that championship to be worth something, then all the other teams win too, because the league wins. So it's an interesting analogy, and
Mhm.
it definitely relays the message that we're all responsible for influencing and the well-being of each other, and it definitely comes back, to
Mhm.
us. So thanks for that, Hart. And so amazing stuff that you guys are bringing to the table. And I just want to ask you one last question on this. So we had 2020, which seems like, as one of my clients said, it flew by slowly, which I thought was right.
That's a good way to say it.
And then 2021 was kind of hybrid, and now 2022, here we are.
Mhm.
What are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for, Jennifer?
I'm most grateful for my family, and I'm most hopeful for my friends.
That's nice. I love that. I'm definitely beyond grateful for friends and family. And I'm really hopeful. I don't know. I kind of waver on this a little bit, but I definitely feel very hopeful for the tides turning and things kind of not going back to normal, or normal, or the way they were, or anything like that. I don't have sort of this grand illusion around that, but just sort of the tides turning toward a better way. I guess that's the way I can say it, but just sort of having things kind of move in a more positive way. And, it doesn't really feel like that at the moment, just because there's so much craziness happening, but also, I also know there's so much great, so many great things happening. And I think it's really important for us to temper what we take in and understand that even though there's a lot of kind of horrific things happening in the world right now, there's equally the same amount of wonderful things happening. So we have to really choose where we put our attention. And when we choose to put our attention there, that's when we can start to really feel hopeful about it. So I'm, making that shift myself. And so, yeah, I'm starting to really feel hopeful again about things kind of looking up.
Well, I'm grateful for you guys being leaders who care, and the message that you put out there, and sincerely, and because it does make a difference. Some days we think probably, like you said, Jennifer, it's hard, but if it was easy, everybody would do it, type of thing, as they say. But it's supposed to be hard to get something great.
Mhm.
And so I'm grateful for everything that you share, and for being friends, and friends with us at Fifth Element. And I'm positively hopeful, with all the crap going on in the world, that it's shaking people up enough to really, really stand out and make a difference. Unfortunately, sometimes you got to hit a low to get to the way high. And God knows there's some big lows right now, but there's some big highs ahead. So thank you for being unbelievable leaders who care.
Mark, I just want to say, you made me realize, and it's probably a quote that's been stolen, but I think you and Fifth Element are doing something really important. It's not die trying, but it's pay forward living. Thank you.
Oh, that's beautiful, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you too.
Hmm.
Take care, guys.
Thanks for having us on.